Building imaginary worlds through sound, performance, and moving image is the thread that binds Matilda's multidisciplinary practice together. In her work, Matilda develops experiential environments where the familiar interfaces with the unknown, the individual with the collective, politics with fiction, and memories with the absence of sentience. We're looking forward to getting lost in the stories she weaves, whether ambient or absurd. As a visual artist moving effortlessly across different media, Matilda touches upon many of the same nodes of interest as our Entangled Design Festival project. So it's my great pleasure to welcome her on stage. Please give her a hand.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for inviting me to Post Design Festival, for having me in Beckmans. It's really exciting to be talking to so many people after this long mode of hibernation. Yeah, I'm really excited to intervene with the thread work and in such a great company of practitioners and thinkers as well. And I will dive straight into the tango as offered via the premise of this festival edition. I will do so in a manner of seeking out some of the knots in my artistic practice, those accumulative and concentrated places within the larger fabric. It is a bit funny for me to be mic'd up like this and not attempt to utterly confuse the audience by reading from a manuscript of the persona I've been performing with and doing works for in the past couple of years. In this series of work called Wishing for More, that I will speak of a bit more in depth in a minute, I've been toying with the dynamics and interface of presenter, receiver, active, passive, and perhaps in more general terms, with the role of the expert in a society that premieres winners and winning narratives. So let's perhaps just stop there for a moment. I'm an artist working across many mediums, writing, sound, music, film, video, performance, installation, and I often work episodically, creating new scenarios that tend to be related to one another in fictional ways and via diagrammatical principles. Storytelling is the thread through all of this. Next to having a solo practice, I often work in collaborations and constellations with other practitioners. I've also worked, and I'm currently working under a number of pseudonyms, artistically, musically, and curatorially, some of them fully anonymous, with no trace to be drawn to my public practice. And I employ world-building strategies and speculative fiction to design versions, parallel worlds, uncannily similar to ours, with certain aspects amplified. The literary, theoretical, and artistic legacies that I'm drawn to and informed by are often messy and diagrammatical. I believe it can be very clarifying to complicate matters, setting things in motion and letting different parts interface with one another is to create loops and break with binary systems of knowledge production, I believe. I will today speak about the Wishing for More cycle that I've cultivated since 2018 by highlighting a few episodes from it. And I will also speak of The Straight, which is an experimental Nordic noir series in film and collaboration between Danish artist Asta Lyng and I. And I will make sure to combine this with a few intermezzos, that is concepts and terms that I tend to return to in my work. And it will start a bit more text-oriented once I have your attention, and then it will go over to more sound and video clips towards the end. So in my work, I often start with a fictional prompt or a what-if scenario that draws from the context or space in which the work will be presented. Perhaps I could best describe my method as letting out a signal through a building to test its acoustics with a few listening instructions. In what place does the signal resonate and reverb at the most? And at which floor level does the signal get muffled? The insulation of the building, the squatters that sometimes enter the house, the measuring instruments in there, searching for asbestos, and the life rhythm of the doves that are the only permanent tenants that we know of. The house as an organism, acoustically rich, non-static, and all its functions described above, some very visible, others latent. The signal activates and is never just one, operating in a closed circuit, but an agent amongst many others. Some of these fictional prompts I've started new works with have been that's my website. What if you, for your entire life, had heard a voice in your head, and one day, approaching your late 50s, you meet the actual source of the voice? This is a question that me and my friend and co-author of this text, Nikhil Vetukatil, pondered upon in this short piece of fiction published by Country Music. Or what if you, from one day to the next, were told that words had become pollutants and you had to limit your vocabulary to 300 words per day? And this is from the Wishing for More cycle that I will speak of a bit more soon. That was exhibited in Stockholm, actually whilst I was in lockdown in London, funnily. And then another question, what if a portal would open up in Öresund, the region and strait of which Copenhagen and Malmö are part of? What would it swallow? Who would you like it to swallow? And what would the consequences of using the portal be? This is from The Strait, a Nordic noir pilot with Asta Linge. Or what if a miniature golf course was a concealment for an interdimensional theme park, and its holes for the golf balls were its portals? From the first episode of Wishing for More, that I'll soon return to. But first an intermezzo in the format of a quote from architect, urbanist, and writer Karl Easterling that I believe you guys have been very influenced by as well. Designers are very good at making things, but medium design is less like making a thing and more like having your hands on the faders and toggles of organization. It is the design of interdependencies, chemistries, chain reactions, and ratchets. Okay, so Wishing for More, the platform and the persona. The Wishing for More cycle is a series of works that I've cultivated since 2018. And that started with an invitation to participate in a miniature golf course in Copenhagen. The exhibition took place amidst the opening hours of the golf course, and regular visitors were playing alongside sculptural works and readings. Equipped with a headset and a full proposal for a new development on site, I wrote an elevator pitch to the exhibition audience and those mini golfers that cared to listen. This would lay some of the fictional groundwork for what I've since been continuing to build on in episodes. An underground theme park with interconnected zones. located underneath this very miniature golf course. In my pitch, I propose to demolish the entire mini golf course above ground, but to keep the holes for each station. Less of an entrepreneur, more of an algorithm, ready to travel through the emotional landscape of each one of the visitors, collecting information from them and asking, what is hiding in plain sight? As much as the miniature golf course necessarily isn't on my most wanted list of problematic infrastructures that I would like to plug into in order to revise protocols, it is an environment premised on winning contained within the experience economy, the commodification of fun. Each station offers a new challenge, which in many ways is relatable to our journey through life. But rather than learning from your mistakes, you hear most often lose from them. I won't make more grand explorations of the miniature golf course because, to be frank, I didn't pick the miniature golf course, it picked me. But as the younger and spatially more humble version of the golf course, it could of course also fit the category of what Keller Easterling calls repeatable formulas. That makes most of the space in the world today. And here asking myself, how can the dispositions of an environment shift when you plug into its structure? What information is to be found in the shadows? What new performances and tendencies can be activated here? I invited the audience to dwell on an interdimensional theme park where each zone would offer something novel. I also really wanted to work with zones, as multifaceted as they are, and their usage across fields. The zone in itself is often described by its exemptive nature, an autonomously shielded entity where free trade and deregulations are the selling points, and the price tag is to be paid for by the cheap labor. Could wishing for more become something different than this machinery of globalized non-space? Could this world be suspended and governed by a different set of rules? And this is just an image somewhere in the Canary Islands that could be really anywhere. Yeah, I have another one that exemplifies some zones as they are recurrent in science fiction narratives, like the Strugatsky brothers' Roadside Picnic, that is set in a so-called post-visitation world where there now are 6 zones known on Earth, just all full of very strange phenomena and happenings. Or like the zone in the science fiction film Annihilation, where we follow a group of explorers who enter a zone called the Shimmer, where plants and animals have been mutated as the result of alien presence. So I started exploring the different zones in the Wishing for More cycle, that each one seemed familiar, but also that each offered a bit of a plot twist. I will zoom into some of these zones by visiting a couple of manuscripts and episodes from the cycle, as well as saying a few things about its persona. So I quote from one of the manuscripts. Let's first think for a moment of what it takes to bake an idea. No solo genius, I can tell you that much, frankly. In my research, I've learned this. If you want to become successful with selling your ideas, there can be no fear of failing. So think about it. The psyche of doubt is a container, and I've buried mine 2,000 meters underground. Hear how it squeaks. Professor Challenger, Don't awake this giant creature, please. In the building of the speech, end of quote. In the building of the speech, I also designed a persona, as much as you can design one. A character that would write these kind of speeches and then just go up to an audience, assuming the role of an expert. Whatever narrative or system you might want to create, remember your preference. This would be her kind of slogan. I'm not necessarily interested in the dynamic of persuasion or of the diligence of tech language. I cringe on the inside thinking that this is very seductive to some ears. So I got excited about toying with another language, one that would be rhythmical and visual, making people feel at home, like story ASMR, but also being capricious. How far could dreams travel on the vessel of the persona's tongue? I knew from the very start that she was very, very biased about the dreams that she was selling. It was a pretext for something else. Yet I really wanted her to come off as the self-acclaimed real estate hero. A persona that in a similar way as an algorithm intelligently collects information, text and subtext, image and code from her environment. I wanted to design an ever-evolving environment for her to skillfully maneuver and attempt to make into a sellable. She was there for a reason. She wanted to sell something, an idea. The salesman and the buyer, the authorship of the idea. Combining the sellability of ideas as much as I wanted to create someone breaking from this narrative, like a glitch, waking up from it, and therefore also criticizing it from the inside. In many ways, she's thus been my signal. I really wanted to test and create the coordinates based upon the signal. So if the first manuscript set the tone for Wishing for More, the forthcoming ones took place in different zones, thematically different depending upon the space and conditions at which it was performed. Which I guess is about having designed the space and the premises in which the fiction can take place and then branching out, designing its rooms, the strange basement, and perhaps the greenhouse. So I will start with a quote from The Greenhouse. The sun is a feather. One day it falls from the sky like a chick, kicked out from its nest. The feather swirls in the wind, and when it finally hits the ground, the only thing left from it is its shaft. The shaft soon decays and is eventually replaced by an inhuman eye. Sometimes it weeps for all that it has to see. When it sleeps, darkness falls over the entire planet. But in the greenhouse, the temperature and light remain constant and moderate. In the first episode, we are introduced to the platform of Wishing for More. It's the vision of an underground theme park with all these interconnected zones, and we are introduced to the persona pitching it. But she's really quite difficult to break down and pin down. Like water, she flows, trickles, and ripples. The episodes following the first pitch have taken place within some of these autonomous zones, always attempting to invert the space in which they have been presenting, rendering the invisible visible. The Greenhouse was an essay I wrote and commissioned from a curatorial initiative called Think Sexy. In their volume on 3D models, where artists and writers were invited to work from a selection of 3D models of artifacts held in various national collections around the world and gathered through websites such as Sketchfab and Scan the World. So I kind of didn't feel too close to the sketches I saw, so I wanted to create my own kind of tombstone, which I did by writing this text, The Greenhouse, which is basically about a conservatory for artificial life and memories. And the actual scenario in this chapter draws upon a spoken word sound piece I'd made some years back before called Alex. And Alex's character, you never meet in the sound piece, but you only hear about from Alex's friends. Alex, where are you? Alex, how are you? Defined and identified by their absence, Alex eventually merged with the persona, and by this also gained some agency. In the greenhouse, the persona is the caregiver. She nurtures her memories of these characters that she once knew, and she keeps them in a greenhouse, a place for things to grow, but also where things can be conserved and protected from external challenges. At the same time, it's built from glass, an incredibly vulnerable building. I will read a short excerpt from the script that in some way gives some clue to her intentions, kind of combined with a biographical moment of a tired star, like an MTV Cribs moment, or just a rare time when a journalist is able to pierce through the PR shield of a celebrity to ask an actually personal question, like, what is your intention? And I quote, "She storms out on the entire cast. The entirety of the cast are 8 loosely intertwined friends. Some of them have known each other for a long time. Others are relatively new to one another. The common denominator is she that goes by the author. It gives her authority to be the central node for all of these characters. She builds their infrastructure and defines the framework in which they can explore their agency. Now she slams the glass door on the group that is seated inside the greenhouse, wishes for the construction to shatter into 1,000 shimmering glass pieces, for her microcosmos to collapse and dissipate from the land on which the greenhouse has been built, for sublime images in moments of mental sublimation, refractions and sonic ripples through the building, an attack on its flesh, bones, an infestation of its organs, an emptying of its veins, no pulsation, rapid loss of temperature. The building is dead. Someone call 911. But zeros and ones cannot be annihilated like that. In fact, the binary of death and life here becomes obsolete." End of quote. So imagine this greenhouse. She's the only one able to go in and out of it. She is the janitor and gatekeeper, but also a bit like the bioexorcist in Tim Burton's Beetlejuice. For those of you not familiar with the strange film, it's about a couple who dies in a car crash. And without realizing that they've died, they return back home to their house, slowly witnessing another family moving into the house. And as they become aware of their death, they start to haunt the house with little impact. So they contact Beetlejuice. He's a bioexorcist from the netherworld, also with very little impact. Similarly to this tragical figure in Burton's fantasy comedy, the persona also seem more and more stuck within this network of these loops, like she is on a mission, hidden from the reader's plain sight. And here we have cities. In cities, which is another part of the cycle, we return to one of the previously mentioned repeatable formulas that can be named as part of contemporary capitalist infrastructures, namely the mall. Cities is a fictional mall and an attempt to think of the mall as a self-regulating system, an environment which premieres horizontal work conditions, but it's also a built environment made to collect consumer habits. Situated market research. This is the chapter where the persona really inhabits the role of the janitor. Cities is another manuscript that I wrote for the persona and that was performed in Berlin just a week before I retreated into lockdown in the UK. And the premise of Cities eventually served as an inspiration for a sound piece I made in collaboration with musician and artist Eva A, that I will also play a short bit from if it works out. But first, I'll just read a short quote from the manuscript. And I quote, "I work in a mall, it's called Cities, with an apostrophe. In Cities, there are lots of different little shops and cafes. There are massage chairs dispersed all over the fucking place. It's a flat one-floor building, not like one of those erect tower blocks that shuffle people in and out of their small shoeboxes, placing them at enough height to give them the sense of a bird's perspective, a sense of freedom. I work in a mall, it's called Cities." End of quote. So the walls and interiors in this text or proposal were a bit like the spaceship in science fiction writer Octavia E. Butler's Dawn, belonging to the alien race, the Oankali, organic and responsive to any kind of harm or alteration of the lived environment. And I will read another short excerpt from this and then play the track, Cities. And I quote, "If the Naughties gave everyone the opportunity to say, 'Visit my site. This is my site. Welcome to my life. It's my view, my Zoom. In and out of topics I like. Find important, highlight, discuss in the commentary field. Some space for reflection, get me going.' Then the last decade made every daydreamer and part-time lifestyle employee a skilled entrepreneur. Less of an option, less of a niche, more of a general representation of a spoonful of events given 3 seconds each. Where's the narrative? Where's your narrative? Did we lose the plot? That's exactly the mind route I took before I entered the new decade with a new idea, new brand, a new building. That's when I had Cities build in 3 seconds, the length of a story, a short bit of information, a debris of a context by nature, like a reversed implosion of a building, diluting the concentration of matter and energy." And mine and Eva's sound piece portrays Cities from an outsider's perspective. It's the inhabitants of a metropolis one day waking up to a mall, shooting through the cityscape of high-rises, just like a baby in the womb. The mall is here born from its natural habitat, appearing from the mist in the midst of the entire financial district. Ah, ja. Jag vet inte. Ah.
Thursday night frost settled on the window frames. When it was time to leave the dinner party, we opened the front door and saw what probably could be described as the greatest scene of the week. The whole neighborhood was under mist, as if someone had installed 1,000 giant mist diffusers everywhere. All the shapes we used to know so well, the rooftops, the street signs, and even all the cars, were now swallowed by the cloudy smoke. I posted a pic of it on my Instagram stories because why not, but the photos didn't really do it justice, as they rarely do. My friend who lives in a nearby block, quite high up, with a view over the city skyline, sent me a video and wrote, "The financial city has disappeared." I found it quite funny, but you really couldn't see it.
No, okay. I realized that I'm like running low on time. So, since a miniature golf course traditionally have 19 stations, and 19 is the number I'm now approaching in terms of episodes in this cycle of works, I will now speak of the last episode in this cycle, Clones, which is a fictional piece that I've written and scored into a sonic narrative of 20 tracks and chapters. And it will be released with a CD, a website, and a concert in Amsterdam in 2 weeks, 13 days. So yeah, I just will say a few words quickly about this, and then I'll go over to the Nordic Noir. Or actually, I'll play something from this as well, if there's time. So Clones is loosely based on this persona, but it's kind of like a breakup story with her. It's the ghost fading away, opening up for another character that I want to continue working with. It tells the story of a never-ending winter from the perspective of a narrator that is visited by the persona at night. It's in the absence of shifting seasons that dreaming becomes the primary state of transformation. And then, I will play you the last track of this album as a preview, which marks the protagonists of Clones, where it has finally left a persona behind. So let's see.
It's like once a week I would make up my mind, tell myself I was ready, go ahead and write all those messages, caught my breath after each one. It was like a man in mercifulness. Each time, vague apologies, tell myself I was ready. Promises, promises, changes. Yes, I'm going through changes. Cross my fingers. This time is gonna be different. Decision time. It's just gonna be different. This time I cross my fingers non-habitually. This time it's gonna be different. And then it happened. I passed through the mirror of my own image and arrived in the backstage area. I used to like to know where you go when you go now. I just think of you as one of those trains arriving and departing whilst I'm standing here waiting for my own journey. And then she whispered,
Four things do not come back: the spoken word, the sped arrow, the past life, and the neglected opportunity. This is from Cowboy Bebop's neo-noir, sci-fi, anime, TV series, and its Astrogate closing. And I would here like to offer an intermezzo before I speak a bit about the experimental Nordic noir, The Straight, a glue between the wishing for more cycle and The Straight, the portal as fictional device. Perhaps the portal could best be described as the little black dress of the sci-fi writer, suitable for any occasion. The portal is not uncommonly represented by a door or passage, a gateway. I think of the portal as something that hijacks space, that introduces a new fictional parameter and rewrites the conditions of space. If you're interested in hearing me and my friend Nina speaking in depth about portals, there's 2 hours of it online on her podcast, Tales from Beneath. So, last quote on this, something that is charged with energy and coded with an inevitable consequence for anyone who employs it. So this is a quote from Sarah Ahmed before we go over to The Straight, and I will read it. For it is important to remember that life is not always linear, or that the lines we follow do not always lead us to the same place. It is not incidental that the drama of life, those moments of crisis that demand we make a decision, are represented by the following scene. You face a fork in the road and have to decide which path to take, this way or that way. And you go on, you go one way by following its path. Straight. So, let's watch the trailer.
I don't want to be here when shit starts going down over there.
What will go down?
That's for you to find out, I guess, because I won't be here.
Oh, okay.
Hey, I har ikke lyst til at blande jer i det her, okay?
So that's The Straight, which is a film directed, written, edited, and produced by Danish artist Asta Linge and I, for which I also made a soundtrack under a pseudonym 5-Star Rockstar. And it premiered as an exhibition in Malmö in 2020 in the fall or late summer. And we've been showing it at solo exhibitions in Copenhagen and in Oslo, and we're now actually in the midst of filming the subsequent trilogy of it, which will be called The Straight Trilogy, 3 short films. And this is just...
I don't want to be here when shit starts going down over there.
What will go down?
That's for you to find out, I guess, because I won't be here.
Oh, okay. Maybe I have to go further there. Okay. And this is just quickly from our exhibitions in Copenhagen last spring with this hypertypical kind of Nordic garden furniture. And this is our more like candlelit installation version in Oslo. So The Straight is a fictional film set to take place during the warmest summer on record in the region of Öresund. In the film, an array of strange events unfold. Swimmers and kite surfers go missing from the coastlines of Denmark and Sweden, whilst debris of personal belongings wash up on the shorelines, aided by dramatical fluctuations, tidal fluctuations. The Lynetteholm project, a large-scale expansion scheme of the city of Copenhagen involving several corporate partners, is suspended, and the artificial island promised to put an end to the housing crisis is postponed indefinitely. Amid rising tensions, a geological survey on the island located in the strait between Malmö and Copenhagen, Saltholm, I think it is actually, is published and contributes to blurring facts with fiction. The investigations and disappearing evidence, the public is in turn confronted with apathetic politicians, absent investigations, and disappearing evidence material. When an entire cargo ship goes missing, conspiracies of a supernatural force somewhere in the strait proliferate. 2 independent investigators, played by Asta and me, emerged to collect evidence and witness accounts from locals, tracing and mapping testimonies and events. As the infrastructure of the region crumbles, everything points towards a portal that has reopened after centuries of closure. In the wreckage of supposedly permanent landscape, new doors and theories around the origin of the region open up. So I'll show a clip from the press conference.
Today we have gathered to clarify the strange events that have come to frame this summer.
Excuse me, can someone please clarify why there's no aircon in here? I mean, it's super, super warm and getting hotter and hotter and hotter.
I regret to inform you that the aircon is broken. And we are running low on electricity and we are running low on water.
Really?
Yeah, so I have to keep this.
I mean, this is super, super frustrating. We've come here for answers. There's been silence for so long. Questions concerning missing people, exploitations of workers,
supernatural phenomena happening in our region, and now we have this sweaty Nimrod reading from a manuscript, and you're sitting there drinking water. There's a huge shortage. There's a drought on whole Amager. The region is doesn't have any access.
I fully understand that you have a lot of questions, but as the summer is nearing its end, all of us have a lot of question marks. If you could just let me speak for 1 moment. I will try to resculpt some of these question marks into exclamation marks. There are no more people coming today. The foreign minister is not available, and the police is doing other things. They are helping all the disappeared people.
When I today announced that the Öresundsbridge, the backbone of this region and the oxygen-breathing international flare to allow all of us have been temporarily closed, it's with caution to all of you who have planned vacations and have planned to travel over the bridge or go elsewhere. You should now look to your own house and to your own number ones. Movement has been halted for the time being. In fact, the government is planning another press conference very soon, and the police will participate when it's not needed elsewhere.
While we wait, it's my pleasure to present a reassuring message from Copenhagen's own developer of Lynetteholm. Welcome.
Well, thank you all for coming this afternoon. The Lynetteholm project has been underway for several years now and is one of the most ambitious urban expansion schemes the city has seen since the restructuring that took place during the reign of Christian IV. Upon completion, it will house up to 35,000 inhabitants in 20,000 new climate-friendly flats. Parks, cafes, restaurants, offices, creative hubs and playgrounds. Lynetteholmen is building a new and better tomorrow. The project also includes a new ring road that will finally complete the circle around Copenhagen, improving mobility and general logistics. We are pleased to announce at this press conference that the
So in the Strait, Asta and I, being long-term friends, having met in London, where we both studied and lived for a long time, we wanted to create something very absurd of our familiar habitat of Copenhagen and Malmö. Growing up in Malmö, not very far from the bridge itself, I witnessed the bridge being built, and as a 10-year-old, I even sang on its inauguration. I still remember one of the songs that we sang with a Danish school class that went, "Hello, you over the strait, we've come to unite." The Strait was also filmed with a handycam from 2000, very poor quality, this conversion as well. The same year that the bridge was open. So we wanted to capture this mediation of imagery from this era, whilst not setting a specific timestamp on the fictional plot, because we are driving around in this massive BMW SUV and also speaking through our normal iPhones. With the Strait, we wanted to look at the shattered pieces of the bilateral dream work sold to us by the introduction of the bridge, the border control that halts the seamlessness for those that do not belong to the narrative of a Nordic union, the repeatable formulas of malls that greet the travelers at their first stops into each countries, and the sculpting of an artificial island that officially could be described as one of the largest infrastructure projects in Danish history, a dump of waste materials that will have severe impact on the wildlife waters, not only in the Strait, but as causality works, the entire Baltic Sea region. And as mentioned, we are currently filming the subsequent trilogy, the Strait trilogy, where we are digging deeper into the topics introduced in the pilot. The Lynetteholm project has also been fully set into motion with the first diggings that started earlier in January this year. In our current production, the portal has even more so become a fictional device to travel between time eras. Here, we acquaint ourselves with post-rhetorical greenwashing in the making, with a language that exploits inclusivity and the echo of a failed welfare state. The Nordic noir is also one of the largest exports of the Nordic countries, and thus, we are proud to continue this legacy of exporting the dark reality of our contemporary Nordics. We're not going to watch that again. Last one. So my talk is called Designing Fictional Worlds, which admittedly is quite a boring title for a talk, but I did pick it myself with the ambition to offer a clear way into how complicating and tangling matters and the connections between things, tendencies, and environments is a very rewarding practice in my experience. Perhaps we all need to practice telling better stories, as my co-star app likes to update me on. Because fiction, in my opinion, can have us return with a sharper reality. Or like experimental composer and installation artist Marianne Amacher said, you have to listen for the ghosts. Once you hear them, you've made a home for them, and they will always be there. Working with a perennially evolving cycle, as well as with an ongoing film project, are concrete strategies for myself to define the shelf life of projects in my practice. To look at the whole and its separate parts simultaneously, and to not decide on a firm beginning or end, and absolutely no prize award for the winner of it all, because really, there cannot be one in these stories. Thank you.